Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
And we're back for another edition of the Last Round Podcast here in 2024. Thank you again for joining us, whether you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, wherever you're at, however you're listening, or you're on Twitter or X. I still need to get used to that, whether it's X or Twitter. This name interchanges all the time. It's all changes interchangeably. I don't know if I said that right. Oh, well. Jumping right back into it. Fight reviews this past Saturday, the 13th of January, from Quebec City in Canada, the country of Canada, on ESPN Plus for the IBF, WBC, and WBO, light heavyweight championship of the world. Artur Beterbiev gets a 7th round TKO stoppage over Callum Smith, who takes the second loss of his professional career, with the first one coming from Saul Canelo Alvarez a couple years back. I believe that was a fight in Texas, if I'm not mistaken. So obviously we talked about this fight last week, previewed it, and there was a lot of people, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you might have picked Callum Smith, but there was a lot of people putting money on Callum Smith. Maybe, okay, you're shaking your head no, so you didn't. No, neither of us picked Smith, but there was a lot of people in the boxing sphere, the boxing world, I guess is an online world, as you want to call it, that were leaning towards Smith, saying, hey, he's at 175, he feels out better. It's a higher weight for him. It's a more appropriate weight for him. And then the betting odds and the betting lines were kind of getting, just like anything, but they were getting a lot closer, and then the money for Callum Smith was becoming a lot more attractive. Well, and then everybody, I feel like the last, I don't even know, X amount of fights that Beterbiev's been in, everybody says, well, he is getting older. He's 38 or 39 now. I think he's 38. And, Father Time is undefeated. We've talked about that before. But, like you said, like we just talked about, we both picked Beterbiev to win, either by knockout or stoppage or one or the other. And that's exactly what happened. I saw that during the exchange, Beterbiev kind of went with an uppercut. I believe it was a right-hand uppercut, if I'm not mistaken. It could have been left hand, but I think it was a right-hand uppercut that landed on the jugular throat area of Callum Smith. And if you watch the slow down video of that punch to the throat, man, that was brutal. That was brutal, and that spelled the beginning of the end for Callum Smith. Were you surprised, Mike? What'd you think? You picked Beterbiev.
Not surprised at all, to be honest with you. I'm not really too sure why. And maybe it was just like the old, backer Brit. That's why I like Eddie Hearn, and a lot of the British people, like journalists, fighters and stuff like that, decided to back Callum based off what, his biggest ever victory is probably when he beat a one-handed George Groves in the World Boxing Super Series final. He arguably lost to John Ryder, was completely well beaten by Canelo. And I would have said, if anything, Ryder and maybe Canelo, the styles that they kind of implemented to beat Callum Smith were similar-ish maybe to Beterbiev, who just kind of is just a juggernaut, isn't he? He just keeps coming, cuts the ring off, hugely powerful. And you could see that Callum Smith just couldn't really handle it. Beterbiev's jab was probably the best it's ever been. At what age, 39 was he? He looked really good, really, really good. And yeah, Callum Smith, I think he's, in terms of, what he's achieved and his resume, massively kind of overachieved, really. He's had a, unified super middleweight world champion, World Boxing Super Series, and just kind of got people at the right time, George Groves, beaten by Callum Smith and retired swiftly afterwards. I just didn't really see it. I think I pretty much picked, that he was going to lose by knockout, and I think I was maybe wrong by the round. I think I had it later when we did the guesses last week, but at least it gives us the big fight we've all been looking for. Beterbiev and Bivol, hopefully, is it like March or April time in Saudi? So looking forward to that. That's going to be a great clash of styles.
Before we move on to the whole Bivol matchup later this year, which is, I think that's a straight 50-50 fight, especially after this performance from Beterbiev. I saw on Twitter somebody was talking about fantasy matchups, like, oh, okay, what if Beterbiev would have fought Andre Ward? How would a potential fantasy matchup like that? Normally for these fantasy matchups, I'm not really like, that's why it's a fantasy. It's fun to talk about, but we really don't dive into that so much here on the show. But I thought that intrigued me a little bit. Beterbiev, Andre Ward fantasy matchup. Obviously at 175, both of their weights. Andre Ward did show. You talked about Beterbiev's jab, how it was very strong, very prominent in this fight against Callum Smith. And Sergey Kovalev, the crusher, was known for a very, very strong jab. And in the first fight against Andre Ward, he showed that. Some people thought that Kovalev should have won that fight. And Beterbiev, at least in this Callum Smith fight, showed that he's got a pretty strong jab too. Let's just give me your take. How would a fantasy matchup between Beterbiev and Ward, if you just had to break it down, just off of your mind?
That's a good one. I'm trying to think who Ward struggled with. Did he struggle with anybody that was similar to Beterbiev?
Sullivan Barrera? Barwell.
He's just not as strong. It's a good fight. Maybe Beterbiev is just like a late round kind of stoppage. He just kind of breaks him down because it's kind of like, okay, can Andre Ward stay away from Beterbiev for the whole of the 36 minutes, because he just keeps coming and doesn't, kind of like how Canelo did to Callum Smith. It doesn't matter where he hits you, shoulders, arms, biceps, anywhere on the torso. It just breaks you down because he's so freaking heavy-handed. I'd maybe go with Beterbiev after that. A super late round stoppage.
But it's an interesting matchup, like, just to think about. And like I said, normally these fantasy matchups, it's like, it is what it is. But that one really popped out and intrigued me. I was like, that would have been interesting. That would have definitely been an interesting matchup. But talking about Beterbiev and Bivol, both have all the titles, or Bivol has the WBA light heavyweight title, 175 pounds. Artur Beterbiev has all the other titles, IBF, WBC, and WBO. So we're going to have an undisputed fight. It seems like it is going to happen. And it'll happen in Saudi Arabia. I know the Excellency, he tweeted out.
Jesse Vargas?
Yeah, exactly. He tweeted out after Beterbiev's fight something about that. So that's pretty good news. We're going to see a Beterbiev-Bivol fight. I think that's, for the year, if you think about it, what 50-50 fight for this year in 2024 is probably closer than that right now?
That could potentially be made, you mean? Is that?
Yes.
Oof. Yeah.
I think that's it.
Like Fury, Joshua, I don't think that's a 50-50. I think Fury.
No, I don't think that's 50-50 either.
Big fights. Boots, Ennis, and Crawford. Would you say that's?
No, I don't think that's 50-50 either.
Benavidez.
They're good fights. These are good fights you're mentioning, but like I'm talking about like legit 50-50.
Benavidez, Canelo, no? Would you say that?
I don't think that's 50-50 either. That's just me. But I'm talking about like even Bivol Benavidez. What about Beterbiev Benavidez? Like nobody talks about that. Obviously, Canelo's the big dog between 160 and 175. Benavidez is a Mexican monster. That's what they call him, or he gets the nickname from somewhere. And the big money fight is Canelo. But I think I've said it before. A Benavidez-Bivol fight is a lot more competitive, I think, between those two than a Benavidez-Canelo fight. And I didn't even think about Beterbiev-Benavidez. Imagine what a war zone that would be.
You think we see two? Bivol and Beterbiev? You think there's a rematch? No one's asked yet, I don't think.
I could see it. I could see it.
Because they both got titles, aren't they? So they're,
Yeah, no, I could definitely see it. Honestly, after they win or whoever wins that fight, even if there is no rematch, honestly, I'd be calling Benavidez out. That's a big money fight. I would. I'd be calling Benavidez out. Bivol's already shown that he could beat Canelo.
I mean, the problem we have there is it's a great fight on paper, like you say, but I'm sure Benavidez is kind of hoping like, okay, I'm waiting for that Canelo money.
Yeah, of course. That's
the gravy train.
The financial incentive is huge for Canelo, so that's understandable. But a Bivol-Benavidez fight or a Beterbiev-Benavidez fight, think about all those together. Like those in terms of competition, obviously blockbuster, money, attention. Canelo-Benavidez is the fight. But I'm talking about competitiveness. Bivol-Benavidez, Beterbiev-Benavidez. You interchange all those three, like in terms of competition, those are all close fights. And then people forget that. And Benavidez, like, I mean, who knows if he can make 168 later this year? Like, like Canelo hasn't announced his next fight for May, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be Benavidez. Maybe it's September. But Benavidez has shown that he kind of blows up in between fights in terms of weight. Seems like he's a lot more comfortable at 175. A round robin between Beterbiev, Bivol, Benavidez at 175. You talk about boxing skill and war fights. That's it right there. Those three, just interchanging.
It's going to be interesting where they go.
Yeah.
If it's if she's like, if there's no rematch, like where did they go? Because Beterbiev is he's completed that division.
Yeah.
Does he go to cruiser, like just to kind of for like legacy? Does he just retire because he's nearly 40?
Honestly, like I told you, if I was Beterbiev, obviously you can call it Canelo, like, oh, Canelo. I call it Canelo and Beterbiev. If Beterbiev wins, I'd call out Canelo and Benavidez. Be like, let's fight 175. Because he'd make more money with either of those guys.
The lucky thing for Callum Smith after this fight is the British division. You've got like Dan Aziz, Buatsi, Lyndon Arthur. Like he can still drop down a level or two and still kind of make some good money on the UK show.
Right. No, exactly. So either way, it seems like it's very likely we're going to get Beterbiev, Bivol. And honestly, that's a 50-50 fight to me, man. And I know people are like, well, Beterbiev just showed that he's still got it. Like he's still knocking guys out. You're right. He's got power. But Bivol's a slick boxer, man. He's got a high IQ, and he just fought a couple months ago too, and he looked great. So, as of right now, it's a 50-50 fight. And, I wouldn't even know who to pick right now. As it gets closer, obviously, we would dissect it. But, yeah, I'm looking forward to that fight, man. That's in terms of competitiveness, 50-50. I don't think it gets in at the moment, at least for this year. Beterbiev, Bivol, that's the fight right now, 175. So, yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Good thing or bad thing that these are all going to Saudi? Good for the boxers, right? Because I'm sure they're getting paid more.
Oh, yeah, well, they're getting paid, but, like, obviously there's pros and cons, but from a fan's perspective, these fights are at 2:00 in the afternoon. It takes away from the spectacle, from watching at night, having people over, having parties, these big fight events. And it severely hinders the chance to go attend the fights. It's not in New York. It's not in Las Vegas. It's not in LA. It's not in Texas. It's the chances to go attend something like that are extremely limited. I mean, I know people are like, oh, no, they're not. I went to it. I mean, they're a lot more limited than traveling within the States. That's what I'm saying. So, but they have so much money over there because of the oil that they can make these fights. because they're like, oh yeah, we can pay it, and they can lose money and they're still trillionaires. So it doesn't matter that they know that, so I guess it's, from a selfish perspective, I'm going to say it. I'd rather see them in the United States. But then again, you'd probably wait a lot longer for these fights to materialize because the money won't be there. But, at least we get to enjoy these fights closer to us. We have chances to go to them in a realistic fashion. But it is what it is. People can look at it from the other side and say, well, no, at least these fights get to get made a lot sooner because of the money out there. That's true. I acknowledge that. But if you're asking my opinion, I'd rather keep them over here in the United States. That's just me. It is what it is. Beterbiev at the time of the stoppage was up on the scorecards 58-56 twice and 59-55. So in the 7th round stoppage, he was up on the scorecards. But Beterbiev is a KO artist, so he's the guy right now at 175 pounds. So him and Bivol is going to be a crazy, crazy fight. I'm definitely looking forward to that. Somebody's not getting up in that fight. Moving on, also on that card, Jason Maloney from Australia gets the majority decision win over Saul Sanchez. This was for the WBO Bantamweight Championship of the World. Maloney gets the victory by scores of 116-112 twice, and then 114-114. The third judge scored a draw. Maloney was making the first defense of his title that he won last May, I believe. But this was a good fight. It was a competitive fight. I think Sanchez really gave it. I think he tried to take advantage of the opportunity as much as he could. But obviously, Maloney's well, kind of depends. But if Sanchez wins, you throw back, you bring him back to the States. He can fight in Texas, LA. Were you surprised? Did you agree with this decision?
Yeah, I had Maloney just winning. I didn't expect the fireworks, and I didn't expect the fight to be as good as it was. I can see, Mayhem Maloney. I can say, okay, I understand where that name comes from now. I thought Sanchez did really well.
That's his nickname? I didn't even know that.
Yeah. You could see, Sanchez came in, gave everything he did, and it's one of those ones where, like, okay, you got a world title shot, but he can go home and be like, you know what, like, I left everything in the ring. There was, there's no like, okay, I could have given a little bit more, like I kind of started too slow, I ended too slowly, something like that. I thought he gave a great account of himself, and definitely one of those fights where like both of them can walk away with the head held high, and Sanchez hopefully will get some more chances, especially for TV, because that was just an unbelievable fight. Probably up there for, fight of the year already, at January the 14th we're on today. So, I thought it was good. I thought Maloney probably did just sneak it. And, there's some big fights looking forward for him. And, 33 years old, you can get him in there with Emmanuel Rodriguez, maybe, Nonito Donaire, someone like that.
There's good names. There's good names around that weight class right now.
Yeah, and the guy that kind of jumped onto the scene, Alexandro Santiago.
Yeah.
Good Mexican to fight. I know that Maloney's come over to Vegas, sometimes train at the top rank gym over in Vegas, so it's not too far away from there. But good win for, the Maloney twins. Good win for one of them. Obviously, they've been on the show many moons ago.
Yeah, they've been on before. And CompuBox for this fight, according to their stats, Sanchez landed 362 of his 897 punches for a 40% connect rate, and Maloney landed 297 of 824 for 36%. So, I know people look at stats and stuff like that, like, oh, this guy landed more, he should have won. Like, when you're watching there in person, it's a lot more difficult. And if you look at these stats, they're pretty close. So it was obviously a close fight. But I think Sanchez is still a player in that division at bantamweight, so he'll still land some fights. But it was an excellent fight. Maybe they'll rematch again later this year or something. Who knows? It's not like bantamweight and so unless you want to move up and fight the monster. The monster Inoue at super bantamweight. So you never know.
Maloney fought him back in.
Was it Jason Maloney who fought him? Was his brother?
Yeah, fought him back in. It was a couple of years ago, wasn't it? When he had that fight against 2020.
He went to Japan too, huh?
No, that one was in the bubble.
Was that the only time he fought? Was that the only time Inoue fought over here?
That was when he fought here in 2020, October the 31st in the bubble MGM Grand. He lost by 7th round KO, and it was for the IBF and WBA Super bantamweight.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy. And Inoue hasn't been back since, but it's because he's such a star in Japan. He can make so much money. So I completely understand that. Also on the card, Christian Mbili. Did I pronounce that right? Or is it Mabili?
Yeah, I say it the same. That's Mabili.
Mabili remains undefeated at 26-0 with the 6th-round decision over Rohan Murdoch, who takes the 3rd loss of his career. What'd you think about this performance?
I liked him. I think he's a really good fighter. I'd like to see more like over here. He just seems to give everything, and he looks like an Adonis. He's got that kind of like real sportsman look. I think it's a big step up though, because I know people were saying when they're like he called out Canelo, and then people were talking about fighting David Morrell, and I'm like, okay, dude, that's kind of like a huge leap to go from like Rohan Murdoch like up to someone like David Morrell or Canelo. But hey, he's calling for it. Maybe he knows something that we don't, or something like that, or maybe he's just been like avoided for so long because he's obviously been unbeaten. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do plot him out. But so far, he's doing what I think we want to see him do. He's getting people out of there. Good TV fighter, I think so far. So I'd like to see him more this year. It'd be kind of interesting to see him get him out like 2 or 3 times, gradually stepping up every single time, still see if he's able to do what he has been doing, and then fight someone like a David Morrell. I think that's a step too far right now.
I know Morrell's there waiting in the wings for his big moment, huh? His big shot. Yeah, he's definitely in and around the weight class. Moving on to fight previews this upcoming Saturday, the 20th of January from the Echo Arena in Liverpool. Natasha Jonas, 14-2-1, goes up against Michaela Mayer, 19-1 for the IBF welterweight championship of the world. This is actually a pretty close fight. What do you think about this fight?
Good fight. Should be. The problem I have with it is they always go 10 rounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't get any knockouts. You don't get any knockdowns. Because if you look at it like Taylor Serrano, no knockdowns, no knockout. Taylor Chantel Cameron, 2 fights, no knockdowns, no knockout.
You think instead of going 3-minute rounds, if they just extended it from 10 to 12 rounds, would that help, or would it still be the same outcome if you had to just speculate?
I think any of those changes, like maybe move it to 12, see if that helps in terms of, getting like knockdowns and knockouts and stuff like that. Because the problem you have is once you get like 4 or 5 rounds in, you're like, okay, for example, Jonas is kind of beating Michaela Mayer. You don't need to watch the rest of it because there's nobody that's got the power to knock anybody out. There's no fight like, say, like a Deontay Wilder where you're like, okay, flipping Jonas is 10 rounds up against Mayer, then boom, Mayer knocks her out. It doesn't happen, ever.
Right.
Ever. No, I think the only big-ish fight I can remember with a knockout, Bumgardner when she beat Terry Harper and she stopped her standing on her feet.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was a nice shot.
Bumgardner Mayer, that went all of the rounds. It's just none of the big fights. Clarissa Shields has like 2 knockouts or something like that in her entire career. So that's
even Katie Taylor, Serrano, as big as an event, and it was like, I mean, it's just the nature of the game, right? I mean,
yeah,
you kind of have to accept from female boxing.
Yeah, I think hopefully over time, as they get more money comes into the female side, and maybe we get like better, stronger athletes and stuff like that. Maybe better technique, or they move to 12 rounds or 3-minute rounds. Hopefully we start to see that, because obviously we've seen the the evolution of, female MMA, and hopefully we get the same sort of thing in, female boxing, because at the minute it gets boring, and we're boxing nerds. I watch them all, and I'm just like, okay, could kind of turn this off now, because Jonas has won 7 rounds, so she's won, because there's not going to be any knockdowns, there's not going to be any knockouts, so you can kind of play on your phone, go and get some food, go and get a beer, do whatever you want, because you already know the outcome, and it's sad. It really is sad, because it's not what we want, especially with them headlining, and they keep pushing them to the front of cards to try and show off, like, hey, look at us, we put female fights on. But you're like, you shouldn't, not at the minute, maybe further down the card, because they don't sell. They don't sell, unfortunately.
They don't.
No,
yeah.
It's sad to say, but it's the truth. They don't really sell. They give away tickets and stuff like that, and this card is pretty crap all the way through, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And look at, Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, that fight didn't get made until Jake Paul got involved. Even Eddie Hearn said that. Like, Jake Paul being involved got that fight over the line because of the financial purses and everything. Like, beforehand, it couldn't be made. Like, it just financially wasn't plausible. And then Jake Paul getting involved got that fight across the finish line because of finances. The attention he brought to the fight, it helped the publicity. So, it's like Saudi Arabia. We were talking about having fights over there. That's what they're doing. They have so much money in their government because of the oil in the Middle East. There's so much oil over there, and the properties they have. They can afford to do that. It's the same thing. It comes down to finances.
Yeah, it's like Jake Paul, and it's like you see McGregor now. Kind of pops up everywhere. He's sponsoring everything, which I'm assuming helps. Obviously, some of the fighters get bigger purses. When you've got his whiskey and his beer, sponsoring things, I'm sure that generates, more money for everybody, hopefully, on the cards.
Yeah, absolutely. Also on the card, Jack Cullen, 22-4-1, goes up against Zach Chelly, 14-2-1. This is for the British and Commonwealth super middleweight title. These are pretty, we've talked about, obviously, these titles before in the past. They're like that good stepping stone to the next level, right? So who do you pick in this fight?
Probably the best fight on the card, in my opinion. Chelly at times can be a little bit more of a brawler, kind of overpowers people, throws a lot of heavy punches and stuff like that. So he can kind of tire himself out, because he is a big, muscle-bound type of guy. Jack Cullen, I would say, is probably a little bit more of a boxer. I think I'm going to go Cullen, maybe on points, because I think Chelly's last couple of performances did look a little bit, a little bit not as good. A little bit like he's going a little bit backwards, I guess, maybe because he's stepping up. Obviously, the level's getting better. So I'm thinking I'm going to go Jack Cullen, I think, on points.
I can see that. I could definitely see that. Moving on to news and notes section of this week's episode of the Last Round Podcast. A junior lightweight fight between Oscar Valdez and Liam Wilson is being finalized, according to reports, for March 29th in Arizona, Glendale, Arizona, to be exact. Obviously, this will be an ESPN fight, a top-ranked fight, and all that. I think it's a pretty good fight. You got to give it to Valdez. Valdez stays active, regardless of the losses he's taken to, Stevenson, obviously was a big one and all that. Valdez for top rank, during his contract with them, as he's been with them for quite a few years now. He's been pretty reliable. He's stayed active. He goes out there. He fights a couple times a year. What else could you ask for from a fighter under your promotion, right?
No, he's good fighters. Obviously, stepped up, way a couple of years back now. But he definitely stays active, even though he had that loss to Shakur Stevenson. Hasn't really shied away from coming back out and taking some big fights. This would be a decent fight. If you remember, Wilson actually dropped Navarrete and then ended up getting stopped later in the fight. But
right, that was a good fight.
Yeah, it was a good fight. I think people were like, "Oh my god!" Navarrete's huge.
And both him and Valdez lost to Navarrete too.
Yeah, so it should be kind of like a little crossroads fight. Like, okay, they both fought, Navarrete both lost. Let's now face them against each other. So, should be an interesting fight. But it's kind of early. But I think I would probably go with Valdez. I think he's probably been in the bigger
Yeah, me
fights.
too.
He's been tested the harder, and he's probably got the better amateur career, the better pedigree. I think
Yeah.
I would go with Valdez to win that.
And Valdez hasn't fought since at least last August, which wasn't that far away already. It's a couple months back. When he lost to Navarrete, in a points loss, obviously. He's ranked at number 6 by ESPN in junior lightweight, and then Liam Wilson had 2 decision wins in Australia last year, following his February defeat to Navarrete as well. So Navarrete, beats Wilson, beats Valdez. Now putting them together, it's pretty good. Adds to the narrative, like, hey, both of these guys lost to this guy. Now they're just put them against each other. Got to give it the top rank, man. They do a good job at matchmaking, and it works out as for the story, for the narrative. You got to definitely give it to them. And then also Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., the son of the legendary Mexican boxer Julio Cesar Chavez, was arrested within the last week in Los Angeles, and he was released Thursday night from a Los Angeles jail, and it's reported to have entered a residential treatment program also in Los Angeles, according to his attorney, Lupe Valencia, who also represents Ryan Garcia and others, which I think is interesting because Chavez Jr. has said in the past that Lupe Valencia was like a crook and like he severed ties with him. And then Lupe Valencia popped up out of nowhere here. So I guess they've mended fences there, and maybe that his attorney now. But Chavez Jr. I said in interviews in the past like that Lupe Valencia was a crook and he wanted nothing to do with him, and he parted ways with the guy. But I guess they kissed and made up. So who knows? But Chavez Jr., he's just been having a rough year or two, and his dad, Chavez Sr., has posted videos online in Spanish, obviously, but saying that they've been trying to help his son, Chavez Jr., and trying to figure it out. But it's a tough, the guy's going through a tough battle, man. Hopefully he's okay. What else could you say? Hopefully it works out for the guy, but he seems like he's been having a rough couple years. And it is what it is. And it's kind of interesting too, because his dad, Chavez Sr. had his party lifestyle when he was fighting, and then he ended up opening a bunch of rehab centers in Mexico, throughout Mexico. So, and now his son, I don't think it's his only son. But his one who became the most successful boxer is now going through a lot of this stuff. So it's unfortunate. Hopefully it works out for Chavez Jr. But he's obviously he's been going through a rough time in his life. So hopefully it works out for him and his family and all that. And then also the monster Naoya Inoue and Luis Nery have agreed to a deal for a May fight in Tokyo, Japan, for Inoue's Undisputed Junior Featherweight Championship. According to ESPN, Inoue, 26-0 with 23 knockouts, got ESPN Fighter of the Year honors when he KO'd Marlon Tapales in round 10 this past December, to become undisputed champion, beating out Terence Crawford and all that. So there was some controversy there, but I agree. I think Inoue, at least to me, is the fighter of the year.
Beat Fulton as well, same year.
Yeah, he was on a roll, man. He was definitely on a roll. Like you said, yeah, he beat Fulton in a TKO win last July. Claimed 2 titles in his debut at 122 pounds. And then Nery, I think his last fight, I believe his last fight. I saw him here in the Los Angeles area, just outside Los Angeles, in Pomona, California, at the Pomona Fox Theater, I believe. When he fought there, that was a great fight too. And he was there. I remember asking him some questions in the post-fight media scrum. But the thing with Nery, a lot of people don't remember, because it's been quite a few years now. In the past, and I'm assuming it's still current. But if they announce this fight, or it's going to be announced, I'm sure Japan probably already took it away, but he had received an indefinite suspension from the Japan Boxing Commission in March 2018. But at least according to this news, it seems like he's going to be reinstated. Money talks, right? Money talks. What else can you say?
Yeah, money talks, and I'm sure the officials for the Japanese Boxing Commission are like, you know what, we'll reinstate him so we can see Inoue kick his butt, kind of like get some payback.
I can see that. Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. So, but either way, I'm excited to see this fight because I remember asking Luis Nery in his fight last year. I don't know if it was last year or the year before. I forgot. It might have been earlier last year or something, when he fought in the Los Angeles area. I asked him, I was like, do you think you're the monster of I believe super bantamweight? And then he said, he's like, I'm the monster of this division. So I think I tweeted that out. We tweeted that out online. So there's a video on there. We'll share it again as it gets closer. But yeah, man, regardless, you got to give it to these guys going up against each other. And the monster just doesn't stop, man. He does not stop. This guy's definitely a generational talent. And we should enjoy him while it lasts. So I hope he comes over to the States again and fights over here so people can get a chance to see him in person. Because, yeah, this guy's definitely a generational talent, regardless of the rest of his career. He's done his thing. And then Vasily Lomachenko and George Kambosos Jr. has also been reported for the vacant IBF lightweight title of the world and will reportedly take place on May 12th in Australia. So for Kambosos, Lomachenko's traveling to Australia, so hey, you gotta give it to that too. I mean, that's a decent fight too. You gotta give it to Kambosos too, trying to stay active, and he's had pretty excellent fights, pretty good matchups the last couple of years. Ever since winning that Teofimo fight, beat Teofimo, fought Devin Haney twice, now fighting Lomachenko. You gotta give it to him, man. He's on a good run, whether it's wins or losses.
Maxi Hughes, Lee Selby, silly Lomachenko, like he's making the most of it, like trying to get all those big paydays, which the gladiators, right? That's what they're paid for, the prize fighters. So yeah, he's definitely decided to do it the right way and creamed as much money out of it as he can. Interesting fight though. I think in my opinion, I think Loma probably runs rings around him, becomes IBF champion again.
Yeah. And then people are after him again because he has a title. And then also Crawford and Spence rematch might be off, according to some tweets that Terence Crawford has sent out. And then Errol Spence posted a video that he had some type of procedure, or then he's also said that his eye or something, like he kind of implied that he had trouble in the Crawford fight. That's why he didn't fight as well. That's why kind of he lost. I mean, whatever, it is what it is, right? And then Crawford had some cryptic tweets. It seems like that rematch is off. I mean, is anybody honestly surprised? I'm not surprised.
I mean, it took that long. When was the original fight now? Was it last Easter or last summer?
It was last July, I think.
Was it? It seems to have taken a long time. And then...
I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm really not surprised.
It kind of sucks, but Crawford's not getting any younger, like us all, right? And it's...
I mean, have him fight Ennis. Why not?
Yeah, that's what I'd like to see, especially since just to kind of like pad his record out a little bit, just get some people like in their prime, just so there's no debates over how good Crawford was, because he's kind of sat around a little bit, hasn't he, waiting for some of these, like the Errol Spence fight originally, and then obviously the rematch now and stuff like that. So he's had a little bit of time away. We want to see the best fight the best, right? Especially, when it gets so close, Crawford is so close to retirement now. It's he's probably got another 2, maybe 3 fights if he just tries to cram them all in this year. So yeah, hopefully we see him in there with someone like a Boots, or I was going to say Virgil Ortiz, but he's stepped up now, hasn't he? So
well, Crawford said he's going to move up too. I mean, I think if a shot at Virgil happened at 154 and it was plausible, I think Crawford would still do it. Because I don't think he's going to get Charlo. He's not going to get Charlo. Like, I honestly don't think Crawford is. I don't know. It could be wrong because maybe he does have some type of deal with Al Heyman or something. Who knows? Maybe not. But at this point, I don't see Crawford fighting another PBC guy in his next fight. because I think the only deal he had was for a Spence first fight and rematch and all that. So, I don't see him find another PBC guy in his next fight at least.
Hopefully not, because we'll see him in there with fucking Robert Guerrero or Andre Berto, won't we?
You never know, man. You never know. Crazier things have happened in boxing. Crazier things have happened. For once again, guys, we appreciate you guys listening to this week's episode of the Last Round podcast here in 2024. Another year as we enter our 6th year as a podcast in the sport of boxing. Thank you for being along for the ride with us. But before we sign off, once again, Mike, go ahead and let them know where they can find us and follow us.
We are at The Last Round 12 on Instagram and Twitter, or X as it's now called. Be sure to join us next week. We'll be previewing the big fight between Jaime Munguia and John Ryder.
Looking forward to that one. Definitely looking forward to that one. Because maybe Canelo in May for Munguia. Like I said, I'm a fan of that. I'd want to see it. I'd want to see it. So for my co-host Michael Shepard, I'm Danny Z. This is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round Podcast.